committee to order. I'd like to ask, without objection, that we approve item number 5 and item number 7 on consent, if there's no objection. And that we continue item number 2, and that we begin the agenda with item number 1.
Item number 1, Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee and Department of Animal Services reports relative to making the trapping of wildlife more humane.
Good afternoon, committee members. John Chavez with the Department of Animal Services. I'm seated here with Mark Salazar, our Director of Field Operations. Mark, among many of his other responsibilities, oversees the wildlife group. So that particular group is very helpful in helping us come up with these recommendations. As Councilman Koretz and Councilman Farrell know, there was a motion that was introduced that asked it to come back here and report on more humane trapping efforts. That report is in front of you. The way we researched this, we asked our wildlife team, many years of experience out in the field. Unfortunately, they see a lot of bad stuff in the field relative to inhumane trapping. We also worked very closely with the Humane Society. They had done a lot of research on humane trapping methods, and we did incorporate some of their suggestions. Our department is recommending the ban on certain types of traps: body gripping, body crushing traps, snares, deadfall traps, and dog-proof raccoon traps. The primary reasons for that is they can cause untold suffering, cruel death. Also, they're indiscriminate. You may set a trap for a skunk and trap a dog accidentally. And it doesn't address the root problem of why wildlife is going into human habitat and addressing those types of issues. We also wanted to take this opportunity as a department to look at humane trapping methods that we use or that we do endorse, like box and cage traps, but to make those more humane, to make those safer by imposing more monitoring and inspections, by ensuring that those traps are not put in extreme weather conditions or exposure, the use of non-poisonous bait, and also upping fees and fines. What this report does not address are a resident's ability to trap rodents such as rats, mice, pocket gophers, ground squirrels, and the like. So that is our report in a nutshell. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What's an example of the more humane traps, and how do they work?
The more inhumane traps?
The more humane traps.
Would be box traps, would be traps where an animal actually steps into a concealed compartment and triggers a trapping mechanism, like a little floor lever that will close the back end of the trap and hold the animal inside. Again, you don't want to leave animals in those for extended periods of time because they potentially could harm themselves trying to get out of those traps if they're left there too long, which is why we're asking that there's more regular checking of those traps. And there's even, those types of traps today even have technology where they can actually send off depending on the type of trap, send off a message to the trapper's cell phone and let them know that there's something trapped inside the trap and to go check it. So we've made provisions for that.
That's great. I actually had no idea that technology was available. What kind of changes are you recommending to the municipal code? How's this actually going to work?
You know, the municipal code really doesn't have a whole lot of restrictions on the types of traps that can be used. So really what we're doing here is we're more exemplifying the types of traps that are available and the purposes for when you can utilize them. For example, the box traps that we're talking about, or culvert traps. The type of bait, that there's no type of bait that's poisonous that can be used in these traps. That if the traps are set in certain inclement weather, that they're checked more often than non-inclement weather, meaning if it's 80 degrees outside, we want them to get there quickly and check the animal and then to return the animal to either release the animal or bring the animal in. And then we're also imposing, requesting to, propose in here a fine that any traps that don't follow these requirements and we have to actually pick up as an agency, that they would be charged a fee to come and collect their traps. More than likely, they won't. The cost of many of these traps, for example, even the snare traps, is a piece of wire. It probably doesn't cost more than $1 to make, so most of them will forego their traps anyhow.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just to be clear, snare traps will be banned entirely.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to thank Animal Services for your work on this, and I want to thank the Commission for hearing this and approving this as well. In terms of if there is a violation of, say, someone flagrantly violates and says, well, I'm going to put out a snare anyway, does that be, and say an animal is captured and held that way and suffers, would that be a misdemeanor or a felony?
This would be a misdemeanor offense. I may defer to counsel on this, but I believe it would be a misdemeanor offense.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you, and I think we're heading in the right direction, and there's no reason in the world why we can't push for more humane ways to trap local wildlife in domestic situations for relocation purposes as opposed to the alternative. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fuentes, any comments, questions? Okay, we have a couple members of the public that have asked to speak. Linda Escalante from NRDC, to be followed by Randy Falich, if I'm pronouncing that right, from Project Coyote. Please come up as well.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Natural Resources Defense Council, or NRDC, and our thousands of members in Los Angeles, we wish to state our support for the recommendations of the Department of Animal Services in its report on the use of snares and traps of wildlife in Los Angeles. Actually, very personally, I was involved in a trapping incident back in my college day as a biology student. I can remember how traumatic that was. So I'm actually glad to be here representing. NRDC, as you know, is not a animal welfare organization. However, wildlife conservation is one of our missions. And I want to speak about the conservation value that this bill will provide to the city of Los Angeles. While most people think that wildlife is something encountered in remote forests, deserts, or mountains, our cities also have wildlife of their own. Animals that have adapted to living among people and often perform valuable functions. Small mammals, resident and migratory species of birds, and aquatic wildlife, all call parts of Los Angeles home. And larger animals such as foxes, coyotes, and even mountain lions live in the parks and open space within Los Angeles. Many of these animals provide valuable ecological services. Birds of prey and coyotes help the pigeon and rodent populations keep in check. Owls are one of the few species that regularly prey on skunks. Coyotes also keep fox, opossum, and other small predators populations down. In fact, we know from trappers and reports that snares and traps often end up killing or maiming completely different species from those who they're targeting. Traps meant for coyotes have killed a wide variety of birds, deer, mountain lions, and even people's pets. And even the right species, when the right species is caught, there's little warranty. It has actually, the actual individual is the one causing problems. That's why NRDC opposes the use of snares and traps by wildlife control agents in Los Angeles. Better methods of controlling problem animals exist, which do not undermine the conservation of urban wildlife that are very much the part of promoting a truly sustainable and environmentally friendly urban environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does it make a difference?
No.
Okay.
Welcome. Take whatever seat you like.
Welcome. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Randy Feilish, and I'm the Southern California representative for Project Coyote. Project Coyote is a coalition of wildlife scientists, biologists, and educators promoting active coexistence between people and wildlife through education, science, and advocacy. I'm a volunteer. I speak before you on behalf of our more than 22,000 national supporters and constituents, of which many live in the city of Los Angeles. We support the recommendations of the Department of Animal Services to ban and outlaw the use of snares and other lethal, inhumane trapping of wildlife in Los Angeles. We all know that trapping is very cruel and inhumane, and animals endure a long, very suffering death. Scientific research shows that trapping is ultimately ineffective and ethically indefensible. Our wildlife serves vital ecological roles by helping reduce rodent populations and by keeping our ecosystems in check. The great irony of trapping is that it sounds safe to most people, but provides no guarantee that the targeted animal is actually trapped and killed. In addition, trapping unnecessarily tortures the animal. The trapped animal many times are our own domestic pets. The City of Los Angeles should instead work to emphasize consistent and persistent public education and outreach on the reduction of wildlife attractants. Coexistence is not a passive endeavor. It takes a commitment by the entire city, communities, and a willingness to adopt a long-term approach to coexistence. The City of Los Angeles has a real opportunity to create a model plan here, one that emphasizes environmental stewardship and a humane approach to living with our wildlife. In conclusion, we support the proposed ban of wildlife trapping and request the city attorney.
Feel free to finish your...
It's just one more line. And we request the city attorney to present an ordinance to amend the LA Municipal Code. Personally, after listening to the animal services personnel, I would urge a felony offense be imposed in lieu of a misdemeanor. That's my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And while we don't necessarily disagree, I don't believe we have the ability to...
I know. I just thought I would throw that in.
Propose that, but
Okay.
thank you. I don't know if there are other comments, but if not, I would ask that we continue this item to give the city attorney time to finish drafting the ordinance, and so then bring it back to committee. So thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for bringing this forward. Thank you. Item number 3.
Item 3, CAO report relative to request for substitute authority for one principal accountant 2 position for the Los Angeles Department of Aging.
Good afternoon, Patrick Delahanty for CAO.
James Don, Assistant General Manager, Department of Aging.
We are recommending approval of the Department of Aging's request for a substitute authority in the classification of Principal Accountant 2 through June 30th, 2014. The authority will be used to reemploy a retired city employee under Charter Section 1164B for an upcoming audit by the California Department of Aging. The action is being requested due to the department's need to provide technical support and historical information related to the upcoming audit. Position is being held vacant in the department in order to fund the substitute authority, and the position will be paid for through grant-funded salary savings. The cost of the position will not exceed $47,934.
Now, this person retired in 2011?
Correct.
Yes.
So why are we being asked to approve a substitute authority as opposed to a resolution authority?
The department already has a fiscal director. The reason why we're asking for authority to rehire our former fiscal director is that the audit period that the California Department of Aging is reviewing is from the fiscal years beginning in 2008-09 up to 2011-12. We have all the necessary records, but the auditors, the state auditors also wants information in terms of what were the internal fiscal processes in place to safeguard the grant funds. And that's where Ms. Johnson's expertise, being the fiscal officer for the department, will be able to address and assist us in providing the necessary responses to the audit.
And so this position will be needed for exactly how long, do we think?
It's hard to quantify in that it really depends on what the state auditors want. The concern that we've experienced is that it's a new team each time, so we spend a significant portion of our time on the audit educating them how our fiscal processes work. And it really depends on how much information. Sometimes when you provide an auditor the information they request, it opens several other doors where they want additional information. I feel that this substitute authority gives us the flexibility to just use the level of services we really need and no more.
And just for this
Yes.
one audit?
Yes, because our current fiscal officer is in place now, and hopefully if there's no significant movement, she'll be here when the state comes back for the current audit cycle.
And have you asked for this in your budget for the coming year?
No,
Are you planning for that?
the state comes out once every 2 to 3 years. It's on their cycle, depending on when they can fit us in.
So you don't know whether this is even going to actually take place in the coming year?
We're actually just began the audit. This is for the current fiscal year, and we hope to be done as quickly as possible.
Councilman, to address your question with respect to why a substitute authority instead of a resolution authority, usually when retirees are hired under that charter section, we recommend substitute authority because it's more temporary in nature versus a resolution authority position that is more typically used for grant-funded positions for the whole year. When you have a peak workload situation, as you describe, then the substitute authority would be the proper mechanism to hire those people.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? If not, we will move the item without objection.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4.
Item number 4, continued from November 5th, 2013. Personnel Department report response to motion, Wesson, Martinez, Koretz, O'Farrell, relative to the status of sexual harassment, ethics, and workplace violence training for all city employees, and proposed revisions to the training requirements for city employees and Statement of Economic Interest, SEI Form 700. This matter has also been referred to the Rules, Elections, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee.
Good afternoon, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department.
And Michael Gold, Personnel Department.
We prepared this report with the assistance of the Ethics Commission because the Ethics Commission is responsible for ethics training. Personnel Department is responsible for sexual harassment and workplace violence training. We provided you context and background on the employee development program for the city, give you an idea of where we are now and how we came to do what we do. And at your request, we also took a look at what other cities do with respect to these topics, as well as the county and the state legislature. We also met with Mr. Westphal from Wesson's office, and we couldn't agree more that training in these areas is a great idea. The next question is just how to accomplish that. There are obviously many ways to do it. We provided 3 options, which I'll go through on page 7 of the report. Option 1, all topics delivered to all employees, but online. There would be no additional cost in expenditures because our infrastructure currently could do that. And the only additional soft cost would be employee time spent in the training. Option 2, all city employees, but in person. We received 3 quotes from training providers, and they ranged quite a bit, from $1.6 million to $4 million. And then option 3 is what we're calling a hybrid approach, where we identified the council and mayor and their staff, as well as all general managers, to receive in-person training. The costs for sexual harassment and workplace violence that you see there are just prorated from the quotes we got, so we would propose contracting that out since it's occasional. And everyone else, all remaining city employees, would be trained online in the subjects. And again, that $130,000 noted that's already spent, that encompasses a few things. I wanted to break that out for you. Annually, we license our learning management system for $36,000. We licensed a sexual harassment course for 2 years for $70,000. And then that also includes a one-time cost to develop the ethics course for $24,000. And then the ethics estimate, that is the $82,830, comes from basically staff expenditure, because I believe the ethics ordinance requires that Ethics Commission conduct that training, or that the city attorney, someone in the city does it. And then Again, just for that population of council, mayor, and general managers, and then all remaining filers to be completed online. And I would like to note that we recommend the frequency for workplace violence be every 4 years.
So, do we know whether online training is more effective or less effective than in-person training?
Yes, research shows that it's slightly more effective than in person for adult learners, and particularly for shorter courses that aren't so technical in nature.
Which is more effective?
Online.
Interesting. My sense, having been in office for a number of years and had these trainings every year or two, I had trainings in the legislature and our trainings online. I actually thought our management level training online was very informative and probably the best training in sexual harassment that I've come across. So at least my sense was that you focus more online rather than in a group. How realistic is it financially to attempt to have every employee do in-person training, and do we think there's a value to it?
I think the cost and the effort might outweigh the value, and because online is good for adult learners for these types of subjects, I think it would be incredibly burdensome and obviously costly.
What about in-person training in what's recommended as a hybrid? I mean, I know there's an issue of optics. We obviously want to make it clear that we're taking this seriously, and we have an occasional case in City Hall. Do you recommend that we do this in terms of effectiveness, or do you recommend that we stick with the purely online?
I would recommend sticking with a purely online just because it's proven so efficient. But it comes down to perhaps what do people currently want. And I know there's a push for having in-person for that population. So I think it's just going to be easier, and since research shows that it's just as effective for getting the message across, that's why I would recommend online. But
And in the prior 4 years, I think we had 27 sexual harassment cases from 2010 to 2013. Do we have a sense of whether our sexual harassment training that we've done over that period had a significant impact on that?
I think that would be hard to correlate. I mean, obviously, awareness of sexual harassment is much higher than it used to be. A lot of things contribute to that. Of those complaints, I don't know what number was substantiated, but I could certainly safely say very, very few, if any.
Thank you. Questions, colleagues? Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So given that the benefits outweigh, or the costs outweigh the benefits rather clearly, would you see an advantage to frequency, increasing the frequency of training, just off the top of my head? Or, I mean, this was brought about because of some very high-profile incidences that occurred. Even if it's just anecdotally, what do you see as an approach that would be prudent?
Given our role in seeing that all employees and departments comply with every 2 years and the feedback we get with that, I think 2 years is a good frequency for sexual harassment, and ethics probably as well. I think increasing that might be a little burdensome to people and difficult, particularly if we can't change the course every year or every couple of years, then it's the same thing over and over.
Are there any trends that, are there any departments that have a greater frequency of violation than others that could be especially focused on?
We do try to look at trends, and when there is a sign of that, usually it tends to be, maybe not in sexual harassment, but one supervisor, one individual who's creating an environment for a number of people, and we'll address that with specialized training or whatever, obviously discipline as well. So we'll come up with a customized approach for those individualized situations, but no overall trends with respect to these.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fuentes?
I think, going back to your question about frequency, I would like to add just that I think by expanding to all employees will be incredibly helpful. This year, for the first time, our sexual harassment course was available to all employees because we didn't have a limited number of views. And we saw almost twice as many people who usually take it. So we estimate 10,000 employees in this, supervisors in the city, and we had 18,000 employees take it. So I think just that will be significant.
Well, colleagues, I don't know if we have strong opinions here on this. It sounds like from an optics point of view, we would want to do them in person, but from an effectiveness point of view, we'd probably want to maintain them online. So any feedback, colleagues, on where you'd like to go on this? Because I'm just sort of open on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To me, the fact that, or the sense that you think online training is more effective anyway, and the unknown exact costs, but clearly it's into the millions for in-person training is those are factors into this for me.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to recommend that we move forward with continuing this as an online training method. If there's no objection from my colleagues, that's the recommendation that I would move forward out of this committee. Thank you very much. Item number 6.
Item number 6, CAO, City Attorney Reports and Ordinance relative to successor memorandums of understanding and settlement agreement for the City Attorneys and Confidential Attorneys Bargaining Units, MOUs 29 and 31 respectively. This matter was heard by the Budget and Finance Committee yesterday and is scheduled for Council tomorrow.
And if we could have a report on what this item is about, I would recommend that we not have much discussion on it because a possible threat of legal action may take place. So if we have anyone that's here to speak on that item, we'll hear testimony. And if you could give us a brief reminder of what this item is about.
Sure. Carolyn Cooper with the CAO's office. Basically, what's before you is a package of successor MOUs for 2 bargaining units in the City Attorney's office, the City Attorney's Unit and the Confidential Attorney's Unit, representing collectively approximately 425 attorneys. In addition, as a result of a global mediation process the parties went through, there is also a settlement agreement that resolves 2 lawsuits. And in addition, there is an ordinance in the package that needs to be approved to provide for the vesting of the retiree 2-party Kaiser medical subsidy rate for employees contributing an additional amount to to offset the cost of retiree health care. The report in front of you summarizes the key provisions of the MOU as well as the settlement agreement. As mentioned by City Clerk's representative, the item was approved by Budget and Finance Committee. We're requesting this committee's approval to go forward forthwith to Council.
If we have no speakers on the subject, what I would recommend to my colleagues is that we pass this forward without a recommendation, and I believe discussion would be more appropriate in closed session, and a closed session will take place at the council meeting where this is discussed. So unless there's objection, I would move this forward without a recommendation to the council. And it's been moved and will go forward without objection. And there being no other speakers or items, we are adjourned.